Excuse me, ma'am, may I help you? Maya Williams' hands moved with graceful precision, signing to the lone woman at the GRRi Communications desk in Chicago. Her gentle eyes and flowing black hair framed a quiet strength, unaware that every gesture was being watched. Teresa Clark, a titan in assistive tech, stood before her, lost in a silent world no one else could bridge. From a glass staircase above, Ethan Harper, a billionaire CEO of color, observed in silence, his gaze sharp with intrigue. A single act of compassion was about to unravel a corporate empire's hidden truths. This story of courage, defiance, and transformation will leave you breathless, wondering how one voice can echo so fiercely. Subscribe to catch every moment and share where you're watching from. Your city, your time. Stay until the end. Maya's truth reshapes everything. Maya Williams was a whisper in a world that shouted. At 29, she carried herself with a quiet grace that belied the weight of her past. A daughter of Chicago's South Side, she'd grown up in a modest apartment where love outshone scarcity, her mother's laughter, and her brother Jesse's bright eyes filling the gaps left by a tight budget. Her long, jet black hair, always worn loose and flowing, framed a face both striking and gentle, eyes that held warmth, lips that curved softly, a beauty that seemed to glow from within rather than demand attention. As a PR intern at GRRi Communications, she was all but invisible, her days spent drafting press releases in a cramped cubicle, her dreams tucked away like the oversized navy blazer she wore, borrowed from her mother's closet. Maya had learned American Sign Language, ASL, for Jesse, her deaf younger brother, who'd filled her childhood with silent stories until a car accident stole him away 3 years ago. Since then, she'd stopped signing, the language locked in her heart like a wound too tender to touch. This morning, though, destiny had other plans. The GRRi Communications lobby in downtown Chicago buzzed with the polished chaos of corporate life, glass walls reflecting the morning sun, marble floors echoing hurried footsteps. Maya stood behind the front desk, filling in for a sick receptionist, her hair catching the light as she scanned a schedule. She wasn't supposed to be here, not really, but she'd volunteered without hesitation, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Always show up even when they don't see you. She didn't expect to be seen, not until a woman appeared at the desk, her presence quiet but commanding. Excuse me, ma'am, may I help you? Maya's hands moved with practiced ease, signing the words with a fluid grace that felt like waking a long dormant part of herself. The woman, Teresa Clark, 50 and regal in a tailored gray suit, stood with a tablet clutched tightly, frustration flickering in her dark eyes. A titan of color in the assistive tech world, Teresa was the founder of Q-Touch Technologies, a name synonymous with innovation for the deaf. She'd arrived unannounced hours early for an informal tour, her identity unknown to the staff who passed her by. No one spoke her language. No one except Maya. Teresa's guarded expression softened as Maya signed, a spark of relief crossing her face. She signed back, her movements swift and precise, explaining she was looking for Lauren Jacobs. Maya nodded, her pulse quickening, not from nerves but from the familiar rhythm of connection she hadn't felt since Jesse. Her hands danced, asking, "Do you want me to find her for you?" Teresa's smile was faint but warm, a nod of trust. Maya felt a stir in her chest, a memory of Jesse tugging her sleeve, signing thank you after she'd spoken for him at school. She turned to the reception computer, her hair swaying like a curtain, shielding her from the weight of the moment. From above, Ethan Harper watched. The billionaire CEO of GRRi, a man of color who'd risen from Chicago's streets to its skyscrapers, stood on the glass staircase overlooking the lobby. His dark eyes, sharp with wisdom, fixed on Maya with quiet intensity. His suit, cut to perfection, spoke of power, but his stillness carried compassion, a rare quality in a man who'd built an empire. Ethan often wandered the office early, seeking clarity before the day's demands. Today he'd stumbled upon something else, a young woman bridging a gap no one else had noticed. His fingers rested lightly on the railing, his mind already turning. The lobby hummed, phones ringing, footsteps clicking, the soft clatter of keyboards. Maya's fingers hovered over the computer, searching for Lauren Jacobs' extension, when a sharp voice sliced through. Maya, Diane Foster, the PR director, loomed beside her. Her dark eyes narrowed, her lips curled in a smile that held no warmth. A woman of color who'd clawed her way to power, Diane guarded her territory with a ferocity that left no room for error. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she asked, her tone laced with condescension. Maya froze, her hands dropping. "I was just—" She seemed lost, and no one else was helping. Her voice was soft, almost swallowed by the lobby's hum, but her eyes held steady. Diane leaned closer, her words syrupy and sharp. "Sweetheart, you're a PR intern, not a translator. Stick to your role." The barbs stung, but Maya's composure held, her hair framing her face like a shield. Lauren Mitchell, a mid-level PR staffer, passed by, her chuckle echoing Diane's scorn, her ambition tied to her boss's approval. Teresa watched, her expression unreadable but her eyes sharp, catching every shift in posture, every flicker of cruelty. Ethan's gaze darkened from above. He'd seen talent crushed before, potential buried under protocol. His fingers tightened on the railing, but he didn't move. He wanted to see how Maya would respond, how she'd carry herself under fire. Maya lifted her chin, her hair catching the light. "I'll find Ms. Jacobs for you," she signed to Teresa, her hands steady despite the ache in her chest. Teresa nodded, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. She typed a note on her tablet and handed it to Maya. "Thank you. Stay with me." Maya's breath caught, her fingers trembling slightly as she read the words. It wasn't just a request, it was a lifeline, a moment that felt heavier than the lobby's gleaming walls. She didn't know Teresa's stature, didn't know the empire she'd built. She only knew that, for the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. Ethan Harper stepped back from the railing, his lips curving faintly. A single act of kindness had caught his eye, a spark in a world that often dimmed such light. He knew who Teresa Clark was. He knew what Maya had done. And he knew this moment would ripple far beyond the lobby's glass and marble. The air in the GRRi Communications lobby thickened, as if the glass walls themselves held their breath. Maya Williams stood behind the reception desk, her long, jet-black hair cascading over her shoulders like a quiet shield, her hands still tingling from the signs she'd woven for Teresa Clark. The older woman, a titan in assistive technology, stood before her, tablet in hand, her dark eyes steady with a gratitude that made Maya's chest ache. For a moment, it was just them. Two women of color connected by a language few in this gleaming Chicago tower understood. Maya's gentle beauty, her high-end Hoa demeanor, shone in the soft light. But beneath it, her heart raced. She'd stepped out of her invisible role as a PR intern, and the weight of that choice pressed against her ribs. Teresa's fingers tapped her tablet, crafting a reply to Maya's offer to find Lauren Jacobs. The screen glowed with a simple message. "Thank you. I appreciate your help." Maya nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile, the kind that held both warmth and restraint. She turned to the reception computer, her hair swaying as she typed, searching for Jacob's extension. The lobby hummed, phones chirping, footsteps echoing on marble, the low murmur of early meetings. Maya's navy blazer, slightly too large, clung to her frame, a reminder of her mother's sacrifices and her own precarious place in this corporate world. She was no receptionist, no translator, just an intern who'd seen a need and acted. But that act, so small yet so bold, had already set something in motion. A sharp clack of heels shattered the moment, slicing through the lobby like a warning shot. "Maya." The voice was cold, polished, and unmistakable. Diane Foster, the PR director, loomed beside the desk, her dark skin glowing under the fluorescent lights, her tailored suit as sharp as her gaze. A woman of color who'd fought her way to power, Diane carried herself with an authority that brooked no challenge. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. A predator's mask. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she asked, her tone laced with a venom that made Maya's stomach twist. Maya's hands dropped from the keyboard, her breath catching. She turned, her hair framing her face like a curtain, shielding the flicker of hurt in her eyes. "I was just—" She seemed lost, and no one else was helping, she said softly, her voice almost swallowed by the lobby's hum. Diane leaned closer, her smile tightening, her words dripping with condescension. Sweetheart, you're a PR intern, not a translator, not a receptionist, certainly not a member of the executive team. The word sweetheart landed like a slap, its sweetness a mockery. Maya's cheeks burned, but she held her ground, her hands folding instinctively, fingers brushing the hem of her blazer. Teresa Clark stood silent, her tablet clutched tightly, her eyes darting between Maya and Diane. She couldn't hear the words, but she read the scene, the stiffening of Maya's shoulders, the predatory tilt of Diane's head. Her face remained unreadable, but her gaze sharpened, catching every nuance of cruelty. From the glass staircase above, Ethan Harper watched, his dark eyes narrowing. The billionaire CEO, a man of color who'd risen from Chicago's streets, stood motionless, his suit impeccable, his presence a quiet storm. He'd seen this dance before, power wielded to diminish, talent buried under protocol. His fingers tightened on the railing, but he held back, waiting to see how Maya would navigate the fire. Diane's voice lowered, syrupy and sharp. You always mean well, don't you, Maya? But good intentions don't excuse overstepping. That's called violating protocol. You don't want to be that kind of intern, do you? The lobby seemed to still, employees slowing their steps, phones falling silent. Lauren Mitchell, a mid-level PR staffer, sauntered by, her chuckle echoing Diane's scorn. Also a woman of color, Lauren's ambition tethered her to Diane's shadow, her laughter a calculated alignment with power. Maya's heart thudded, but her face remained calm, her hair a soft frame around her resolve. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat, trapped by years of staying small to survive. Teresa's eyes flicked to Maya, a silent question in her gaze. Maya caught it, her fingers twitching as if to sign a response, but Diane wasn't done. Oh, and Maya, she added, her voice light but her eyes like daggers. Next time, focus on, I don't know, combing your hair or wearing something that doesn't scream thrift store. The jab was cruel, personal, aimed at the borrowed blazer, the quiet pride Maya carried. Lauren snickered, her eyes avoiding Maya's. A few employees glanced over, one offering a sympathetic look, another turning away. The moment stretched, raw and exposed, like a nerve laid bare. Maya's mind flashed to Jesse, her brother at 6 years old, signing, "Tell them I said thank you after a teacher's small kindness." He trusted her to be his voice, even when the world ignored him. She swallowed the pain, steadied her hands, and turned back to Teresa. "I'll find Miss Jacobs for you," she signed, her movements deliberate, her voice barely above a whisper. Teresa nodded, her expression softening, a flicker of respect in her eyes. She typed another note and handed it to Maya. "Stay with me." The words hit like a lifeline, anchoring Maya in the storm. Ethan Harper's gaze darkened from above. He'd seen enough. The cruelty, the dismissal, the quiet strength of a woman who refused to break. His hand loosened on the railing, his mind already turning. Maya didn't know it, but her act of compassion had caught the eye of a man who could shift her world. Diane's words still echoed, but they couldn't drown out the spark Maya had ignited. The lobby resumed its hum, oblivious to the fault line that had just cracked open, a fault line that would soon shake the foundations of GRRi Communications. Maya Williams felt the weight of the moment like a stone in her chest, but her hands remained steady, her long, jet-black hair shimmering under the fluorescent lights of GRRi Communications' Chicago headquarters. The lobby's tension still lingered in her bones, Diane Foster's venomous words echoing in her mind. But Teresa Clark's note, "Stay with me," burned brighter. Maya stood beside the older woman, a titan of color in assistive technology, whose quiet strength mirrored her own. Teresa's tailored gray suit and sharp gaze spoke of authority, yet her signed gratitude felt like a bridge, connecting them across a silent divide. Maya's navy blazer, borrowed and slightly oversized, felt like armor now. Her high-and-hoa beauty a quiet defiance against the cruelty she'd just endured. Teresa tapped her tablet, her fingers swift, and handed it to Maya. The screen read, "I want you to interpret for me today. You, no one else." Maya's breath caught, her dark eyes widening. She signed back. "Are you sure?" Her hands trembling slightly, betraying the storm of nerves beneath her calm exterior. Teresa's nod was firm, her smile faint but resolute. Maya swallowed, her hair swaying as she glanced at the lobby's glass walls, where reflections danced like ghosts of her past. Jesse's laughter, his small hands signing, "You're my voice, sis." She wasn't sure she was ready to step into this role, but Teresa's trust felt like a call she couldn't ignore. The lobby's hum faded as a new presence descended. Ethan Harper, GRRi's billionaire CEO, stepped from the glass staircase, his dark skin glowing under the soft light, his suit a testament to his hard-won power. A man of color who'd risen from Chicago's streets, Ethan carried a quiet compassion that belied his towering status. His voice, rich and steel-laced, cut through the air. "You heard the lady." Heads turned, conversations died. Diane Foster, still lingering near the desk, froze, her lips twitching but silent. Lauren Mitchell, the mid-level PR staffer who chuckled at Diane's barbs, averted her gaze, her ambition faltering under Ethan's weighty presence. "Maya took initiative," Ethan continued, his eyes locked on Diane. "With respect, with skill, more professionalism than I've seen from some full-time staff today." His words were calm but deliberate, each one landing like a stone in still water. Diane's face paled, her authority unraveling. Maya stood still, her hair framing her face like a curtain, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected this, a CEO noticing her, defending her. Ethan turned to her, his expression softening. "Miss Williams, you're with Ms. Clark for the day. Make us proud." He gave a short nod and walked away, leaving a silence so thick it seemed to hum. Teresa signed, "Let's go," her movements brisk but kind. Maya followed 2 steps behind, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor as they moved toward the executive wing. The corridor was sleek, all glass and steel, a world apart from the cramped cubicle where Maya spent her days drafting press releases. Her hands itched with nervous energy, but she forced them to stay calm, professional. Teresa walked with quiet confidence, her tablet glowing as she typed short notes, occasionally signing brief phrases like, "Thank you," or "slow down" with a dry wit that reminded Maya of her childhood pastor, firm yet warm. Their first stop was a design presentation in a minimalist conference room, its glass walls reflecting Lake Michigan's distant shimmer. 2 junior developers, both people of color in their early 30s, stood nervously, rearranging slides on a screen. Maya introduced Teresa with a graceful signed greeting, her hands moving like a dance she hadn't performed in years. As Teresa typed comments, Maya translated, her voice steady, her signs fluid. Teresa's feedback was kind but incisive, pointing out accessibility oversights, colors too faint for low-vision users, missing captions on demo videos, no haptic feedback cues. Maya felt a rhythm return, the language of her brother flowing through her fingers, deeper than sound, a connection she'd buried since his death. The developers nodded, scribbling notes, their nerves easing under Teresa's clarity and Maya's calm delivery. Maya's hair caught the light as she signed, her beauty a quiet presence that didn't demand attention, but held it nonetheless. She felt alive, useful, seen, not as an intern, but as someone who mattered. Teresa paused after the meeting, typing a note and showing it to Maya. "You've done this before." Maya hesitated, then signed, "My brother. He was deaf." Teresa studied her face, her dark eyes softening, and simply nodded. From behind a one-way mirror, Ethan Harper watched. His presence was protocol for high-profile guests, but today his focus was on Maya. He saw her composure, her grace under pressure, a strength that wasn't taught but forged. He didn't know her story, not yet, but he recognized the spark of someone who'd faced fire and emerged unbroken. His earpiece buzzed. "Get me Lauren Jacobs," he said softly, his eyes never leaving Maya. As they left the room, Maya exhaled, her hands trembling slightly. The executive corridor felt colder, the lighting whiter than the lower floors. She caught her reflection in a glass panel. Hair slightly frizzy, eyes bright with adrenaline, blazer still too big. She looked capable, a little scared, but no longer invisible. Teresa typed another note. "You handled that well, even in the storm." Maya smiled faintly, signing back, "Thank you for trusting me." Teresa's response was simple. A signed, "You earned it." For the first time in years, Maya felt the weight of her grief lift. Just a fraction, replaced by a flicker of purpose. The day was just beginning, and something inside her had already shifted. Maya Williams walked the sleek corridors of GRRi Communications' Chicago headquarters, her long, jet-black hair swaying like a quiet banner of resilience. The weight of her new role as accessibility liaison for Teresa Clark clung to her like the oversized navy blazer she wore, a hand-me-down from her mother's days of climbing similar corporate ladders. Her gentle beauty, hien-hua yet striking, caught fleeting glances from passing colleagues, but Maya's dark eyes were fixed inward, wrestling with the storm brewing in her chest. The memory of Diane Foster's venomous words in the lobby lingered, sharp as a blade, while Teresa's trust, "Stay with me," felt like a fragile lifeline. Maya was no longer the invisible PR intern, but visibility came with a price, and she could feel its edges closing in. The executive wing was a world of glass and steel, its silence colder than the bustling lower floors. Maya's heels clicked softly as she followed Teresa to a strategy meeting, her hands steady despite the nerves that hummed beneath her skin. Teresa, the founder of Q-Touch Technologies and a titan of color and assistive tech, moved with a quiet authority, her tailored gray suit a stark contrast to the vulnerability of her earlier moment at the reception desk. She typed notes on her tablet, occasionally signing brief phrases to Maya, "Keep up" or "Good work," with a warmth that reminded Maya of her brother Jesse's gentle teasing. Each sign was a bridge to a past she'd buried, a language of love she hadn't spoken since his death. But the air in GRE was shifting, charged with whispers and sidelong glances. In the PR bullpen, Diane Foster's influence loomed like a shadow. The director, a woman of color who'd fought her way to power, had spread word that Maya's sudden rise was a token gesture, a nod to diversity quotas. Lauren Mitchell, a mid-level PR staffer and Diane's eager ally, amplified the rumors, her laughter echoing through cubicles as she whispered to colleagues, "She's just a feel-good story." Both women, also people of color, wielded their ambition like a weapon, their words cutting deeper because of the shared struggle they seemed to betray. Maya overheard the murmurs as she passed the break room, her hair catching the light like a shield, but each syllable stung, threatening to unravel her newfound confidence. At her temporary desk, a plain envelope waited, unmarked, slipped under a stack of papers. Maya's fingers hesitated, then tore it open. The note inside was typed, sterile, chilling. "Don't make noise if you want to stay." Her breath hitched, her eyes scanning the empty office. The words were a warning, a faceless threat that echoed Diane's mockery. She folded the note, tucking it into her blazer pocket, her hands trembling, but her resolve hardening. She thought of Jesse, his small hands signing, "You're my voice, sis," when the world ignored him. She wouldn't shrink now, not when someone like Teresa needed her. Teresa, unaware of the note, relied on Maya for a product demo preparation, a high-stakes press event looming in Chicago. Maya translated Teresa's typed feedback to a team of engineers, her signs fluid, her voice steady despite the weight of the day. The engineers, all people of color, listened intently as Teresa pointed out flaws in the demo's accessibility, missing haptic cues, unclear visual prompts. Maya's hair swayed as she moved, her beauty a quiet anchor in the room's intensity. She felt the rhythm of signing return, a connection to Jesse that made her heart ache, but also grounded her. Teresa typed a note after the meeting. "You're a natural. Don't let them take that from you." Maya smiled, her fingers brushing her hair as she signed back, "I'm trying." But the whispers grew louder. In the break room, Lauren Mitchell's voice carried, sharp and careless. "She's playing the hero card, signing like she's saving the world. It's just PR optics." Maya, pouring coffee, froze, her reflection in the steel sink showing eyes bright with unshed tears. She remembered Jesse at 6, tugging her sleeve, signing, "Tell them I'm here." She rinsed her cup, her hands steady, and walked out without a word, her hair a flowing testament to her refusal to break. Ethan Harper watched from a distance, his dark eyes catching glimpses of Maya through glass walls. The Billionaire CEO, a man of color who'd risen from Chicago streets, had cleared his schedule to observe Teresa's visit, but his focus was on Maya. He saw the note's effect in the slight tremor of her hands, the way she squared her shoulders against the whispers. He'd faced his own battles in these halls, his success hard-won against skepticism and sabotage. Maya's quiet strength reminded him of his younger self, and he knew she was walking a tighter rope. Late that afternoon, alone in a quiet office, Maya stood before a mirror. Her hair, long and gleaming, framed a face that was both fierce and fragile. She thought of Jesse, his journal tucked in her bag, filled with doodles and dreams. "You never make me feel small," he'd written once. She touched the note in her pocket, its threat heavy but not crushing. Teresa needed her. Ethan had seen her, and Jesse's memory demanded she keep going. She straightened her blazer, smoothed her hair, and exhaled. The storm was here, but Maya Williams was no stranger to weathering it. The auditorium at GRRi Communications' Chicago headquarters pulsed with anticipation, its velvet-lined chairs filled with a sea of faces, executives, engineers, advocates, and press, all drawn to the banner overhead. Breaking barriers, real voices in tech and access. Maya Williams stood backstage, her long, jet-black hair cascading over her shoulders, catching the soft glow of the stage lights. Her navy blazer, still slightly oversized, felt less like a relic now, more like a mantle of purpose. Her gentle beauty, Hienhua yet radiant, belied the storm of nerves churning in her chest. The anonymous note, "Don't make noise if you want to stay," still burned in her pocket, its threat a shadow against the weight of Teresa Clark's trust and Ethan Harper's quiet faith. Tonight, Maya wasn't just an accessibility liaison. She was a voice, and the stage was hers. The invitation had come from Teresa herself, typed on her tablet that morning. "Speak with us. Your story matters." Maya had hesitated, her fingers trembling as she signed back. "I'm not ready." Teresa's response was unflinching. "You're ready because you're here." Now standing behind the curtain, Maya smoothed her hair, her dark eyes scanning the crowd through a sliver of velvet. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady, the language of her brother Jesse alive in her fingertips. She thought of him signing, "You're my voice, sis," his laughter a melody she carried through years of grief. The moderator, a polished woman of color in her 40s, introduced the panelists. Dr. Lila Boone, a disability justice advocate, Ethan Harper, GRRi's Billionaire CEO, Teresa Clark, founder of Q-Touch Technologies, and Maya Williams, accessibility liaison. The crowd's applause was polite but expectant as Maya took her seat at the table, her hair a flowing frame around her composed face. Teresa sat beside her, her presence a quiet anchor, her dark eyes warm with encouragement. Ethan, across the table, gave a subtle nod, his suit impeccable, his gaze carrying the weight of a man who'd seen battles like hers and won. The first questions went to Dr. Boone and Ethan. Policy, metrics, corporate inclusion. Maya listened, her hands clasped under the table, her hair brushing her shoulders as she leaned forward. Then the moderator turned to her, her voice warm but probing. "Maya, your role changed overnight after a moment of empathy at the front desk. What does it feel like to go from intern to liaison in days?" The microphone felt heavy in Maya's hand, the crowd's eyes heavier still. She took a breath, her voice soft but clear, cutting through the auditorium's hum. "It feels like walking into a room where no one expects you to speak, and then realizing you have no choice but to," she said. The room leaned in, murmurs rippling. "When I saw Ms. Clark at the desk, she wasn't being ignored out of malice. People just didn't know how to connect. I recognize that moment because I've lived it. My brother Jesse was deaf, and I grew up watching the world treat him like he was difficult instead of different. I stepped in not for attention, but because I couldn't unsee him, or people like him." She paused, her hair catching the light, her eyes bright with memory. "I can't unsee them now." The silence that followed was thick, respectful. Dr. Boone leaned forward, her voice warm. "You said you couldn't unsee him. That's where advocacy begins, isn't it? Seeing what others don't." Maya nodded, her fingers twitching with the urge to sign. "Yes, realizing silence isn't always kind. Sometimes it's complicity." The words landed like a spark, igniting nods and whispers in the crowd. Teresa signed slowly. Your presence is proof that change is personal. Maya translated aloud, her voice steady, the room absorbing every word. The audience questions came next. A woman from a Chicago tech nonprofit asked, "How do you handle those who think you're here to fill a quota?" Maya didn't flinch. "I let my work speak, and when that's not enough, I let my why speak louder." A man from a software firm pressed, "What's the biggest barrier to inclusion in tech?" Maya's answer was swift. Fear of discomfort. People avoid feeling ignorant or corrected, but growth demands that discomfort. Each response drew applause, not loud but earned, a ripple of respect. Backstage, Diane Foster stood in the shadows, her dark eyes narrowed, her lips tight. Lauren Mitchell hovered nearby, whispering, "She's milking it." Diane's silence was colder than agreement. Ethan Harper, watching from the wings, smiled faintly, his pride a quiet flame. He'd seen Maya's fire, her refusal to shrink despite the whispers and threats. The crowd rose for a standing ovation as the panel ended, and Maya stood, her hair a cascade of strength, her heart racing but unbroken. Slumping onto a backstage bench, Maya exhaled, her hands shaking with adrenaline. Ethan approached, his voice low. "You were brilliant, Miss Williams." She looked up, her smile faint. "I keep expecting someone to say, 'That's enough. Go back.'" He shook his head. "That's why you belong here." Dr. Boone handed her a business card, her voice warm. "Guest lecture for my graduate class. Your story reaches further than policy." Maya stared at the card, stunned, her hair framing her face like a quiet crown. As the auditorium emptied, Maya stepped outside into Chicago's crisp air. Lake Michigan shimmering in the distance. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. Jesse would have loved this. Maya closed her eyes, the breeze lifting her hair. She'd spoken her truth, and the world had listened. For now, that was enough. The air in GRRi Communications' Chicago headquarters felt heavier, as if the glass walls of the 12th floor held secrets too dense to breathe. Maya Williams sat at her desk, her long, jet-black hair cascading over her shoulders, a quiet emblem of her resilience. Her navy blazer, still borrowed from her mother's closet, hung loosely, but her high-in-hoa beauty, gentle yet unyielding, shone under the office's sterile lights. The echo of her panel speech, "Silence is complicity," still reverberated, now viral on LinkedIn and Twitter, her words clipped and shared across Chicago's tech scene. But with every retweet came a shadow, whispers in the PR bullpen, sidelong glances, and the lingering sting of the anonymous note, "Don't make noise if you want to stay." Maya's dark eyes, steady but weary, scanned her laptop where her Real Voices project files lay open, a testament to her fight for the unseen. The morning brought a new wound. An internal memo, leaked to the company's Slack channels, proposed slashing accessibility initiatives, naming Real Voices as a resource strain. The document, stamped with Diane Foster's digital signature, hinted that Maya's disruptive advocacy had destabilized team morale. Maya's heart sank as she read it, her fingers brushing her hair, a nervous habit. She checked her archive files, her breath catching when she noticed altered metadata. Timestamps changed, edits made by someone else. The original testimonials, raw stories of employees' struggles, had been sanitized, their truths softened to fit GRRi's polished brand. Diane's hand was clear, and Lauren Mitchell's quiet compliance, her whispers in the break room, fueled the sabotage. Maya leaned back, her hair catching the light, her mind racing. She thought of Jesse, his journal tucked in her bag, its pages filled with his dreams. When they ignore you, write louder. She wouldn't let them erase her work or the voices she'd promised to amplify. She copied the original files to a flash drive, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest. Teresa Clark, the titan of color whose trust had lifted Maya to this role, had taught her that silence wasn't an option. Maya needed an ally, someone outside GRRi's walls, and she knew who to call. In a quiet corner of the executive wing, Maya met Teresa, whose tailored gray suit and sharp gaze carried the weight of her legacy at Q-Touch Technologies. Teresa's tablet glowed as she typed, her dark eyes studying Maya with a mix of concern and resolve. "They're bearing your work," she signed, her movements precise. Maya nodded, her hair swaying as she signed back. "They altered the files. I have the originals?" Teresa's lips curved faintly, a spark of defiance in her eyes. She typed, "Find someone who'll listen. The truth doesn't hide forever." Maya's thoughts turned to a journalist she'd met at a community panel, a woman of color who'd whispered, "If you need the truth to reach the light, you know where to find me." That evening, in her small office, Maya drafted an email to the journalist, attaching the untouched Real Voices files, stories of a deaf engineer overlooked for promotion, a receptionist in a wheelchair excluded from events, voices GRRi wanted muted. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the send button, her hair framing her face like a shield. Diane's mockery, Lauren's snickers, the anonymous threat, they all loomed, but Jessie's memory loomed larger. She hit send, her breath releasing like a dam breaking. The truth was out, a ripple that could become a wave. By morning, the article hit. Published by Civic Lens, a respected Chicago outlet, it was titled "The Silencing of Voices at GRRi." Maya's name was everywhere, not as a victim, but as a witness, her words from the panel woven into the narrative. Silence is complicity. The piece laid bare the memo, the altered files, Diane's role, and Lauren's quiet complicity, all backed by unedited testimonials. Slack channels buzzed, emails flooded, and LinkedIn posts exploded. Maya sat at her desk, her hair gleaming under the office lights, her heart pounding, but her resolve unshaken. Diane Foster's face was stone when she was summoned to HR. Lauren Mitchell, pale and silent, received a formal warning, her ambition chastened. The PR bullpen, once a hive of whispers, fell quiet, eyes darting to Maya with a mix of respect and unease. Ethan Harper, GRRi's Billionaire CEO, called Maya to his office. The man of color, whose rise from Chicago's streets mirrored her own grit, stood by the window, Lake Michigan shimmering behind him. "You took a risk," he said, his voice low, his dark eyes warm with pride. "And you changed the game." He handed her a handwritten note. Effective immediately, Maya Williams is invited to lead an independent equity and ethics division, coordinate with Teresa Clark. Maya's breath caught, her hair brushing her shoulders as she read the words. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of recognition. Ethan's gaze softened. "This isn't charity. It's what you've earned." She nodded, her voice steady. "Thank you, sir." As she left, her hair a flowing testament to her strength, she felt Jesse's presence, his laugh, his signs, his trust. The storm hadn't broken her. It had forged her. The Chicago skyline glittered beyond the windows of GRRi Communications' new equity and ethics division, a modest space on the 9th floor, far from the executive suite's sterile gleam. Maya Williams stood at the head of a conference table, her long, jet-black hair cascading over her shoulders, a quiet emblem of her unyielding spirit. Her navy blazer, once her mother's, now felt like her own, tailored by the battles she'd fought. Her hien hawa beauty, gentle yet fierce, shone under the soft lights, her dark eyes bright with purpose. The viral article, the leaked memo, Diane Foster's reassignment, and Lauren Mitchell's chastened silence had carved a path to this moment. Maya was no longer the invisible intern. She was a leader, building something new, and the weight of that truth anchored her as she addressed her team. The room held familiar faces, all people of color, all once overlooked. Nora, a designer whose accessibility ideas had been dismissed. Omar, an engineer whose mentorship program was sidelined. And Teresa Clark, the titan of Q-Touch Technologies. Now an advisor. Maya had handpicked them, her voice steady as she laid out their mission. Real Voices would live again, unfiltered, a platform for stories that demanded change, not just applause. Her hair swayed as she gestured, her words carrying the cadence of Jesse's memory. His journal, his dreams, his belief that you never make me feel small. She'd vowed to honor that, to build a space where no one felt erased. The team's new office was a far cry from the glass-walled executive wing. It was raw, functional, close to the hum of the lower floors where real work happened. Maya's desk held a single-frame photo. Jesse at 8, mid-laugh, mid-sign, his joy frozen in time. She touched it daily, a ritual grounding her purpose. The photo, left by Teresa, was a silent reminder of why she fought. Today, she stood before a group of new interns, all from marginalized communities across Chicago, their eyes wide with hope and hesitation. Maya's hair caught the light as she took the microphone, her voice soft but resonant, cutting through the room's quiet anticipation. "I started here as a whisper," she began, her tone steady, her gaze sweeping the room. "A PR intern, unseen, drafting press releases in a cubicle. I learned to speak because no one else would say it for me. What we're building now isn't just about jobs. It's about memory, dignity, space." She paused, her hair framing her face like a crown, her beauty a quiet power. "Some will say your voice is too loud. Others will pretend they can't hear it. Speak anyway." The interns leaned forward, some nodding, others clutching notebooks, their faces reflecting her own journey from invisibility to impact. The silence wasn't empty. It was alive, listening. Ethan Harper watched from a distance, his dark eyes warm with pride. The Billionaire CEO, a man of color who'd risen from Chicago streets, stood in the hallway, his suit impeccable, but his presence unobtrusive. He'd championed Maya's rise, clearing the path for this division, but he knew the real work was hers. He'd sent her a book the week before, an old collection of civil rights letters, a sticky note inside. "You're part of a longer story." Now watching her lead, he saw that story unfolding, a legacy built not on noise, but on truth. The Real Voices initiative was reborn with a fierce clarity. Maya's team compiled stories, a veteran engineer's struggle with hearing loss, a receptionist's exclusion from events, a developer's fight against bias. Each was paired with policy changes, accessibility audits, inclusive hiring, training for managers. Maya's hair swayed as she reviewed drafts, her hands steady, her heart full. She thought of Jesse's journal, its pages open on her desk. "When they try to erase your voice, write louder." She was writing now, not just for herself, but for every voice GRRi had tried to silence. Outside, Chicago's autumn air was crisp, Lake Michigan shimmering under a slate-gray sky. Maya stood by the window, her reflection faint but clear. Hair flowing, eyes bright, no longer the girl who shrank to fit. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother, Jesse's clapping louder than anyone. Maya smiled, her hair brushing her shoulders as she typed back, "I feel him, Mom." The city hummed below, alive with movement, and Maya felt part of it, not a visitor, but a builder. Diane's absence left a void in the PR bullpen, and Lauren's whispers had faded, replaced by cautious respect. The company was shifting, some resisted, some evolved, but Maya's work pressed forward. She met with Nora and Omar weekly, their ideas fueling her vision. Teresa, now a regular presence, signed feedback with a dry wit that made Maya laugh, a rare lightness in her grueling days. Ethan passed her office one evening, pausing at the door. "You didn't raise your voice," he said, his tone warm, "but they heard you." Maya nodded, her hair catching the light. "Jesse used to say you don't need to shout when you speak from truth." As the interns filed out, one lingered, a young woman of color with hesitant eyes. "How do you keep going?" she asked. Maya's smile was soft, her hair a quiet frame. "You remember why you started?" The intern nodded, clutching her notebook, and Maya saw herself in that moment, a whisper becoming a voice, a spark becoming a flame. Maya Williams's journey, from a whisper in a Chicago lobby to a voice that reshaped an empire, shows us that courage doesn't always roar. It's in the quiet acts of compassion, the refusal to stay silent, and the strength to build where others tear down. Her story inspires us to see the unseen, to speak for those unheard, and to stand tall even when the storm rages. What did Maya's fight spark in you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and how her truth resonates. Your voice matters, just like hers. Thank you for joining us on this powerful ride. Subscribe, hit that bell, and let's meet again for more stories that move the world. Until next time, keep speaking your truth.